Grains, nuts, wheat, and seeds make excellent breads, especially if you can get your hands on grains that contain the proteins glutamine and glutamine, like corn, rye oats, barley, rice, millet, and other grains. Gluten, which in flour, is used to make light baking powder products like pancakes, muffins, or quick breads. These proteins are essential to make bread since they are responsible for the rising of the bread. Today, we will be making bread. Okay, first, you will need your standard tools, like a spoon, measuring cup, bowl, sugar, flour, water, an egg, and active dry yeast. At first, add the warm water. Then, add the yeast. Slowly stir in the yeast. Now mix in the first 2 cups of flour. Right now, the glutamine and gliadin are connecting and cross-connecting to form sheets of gluten as we stir in and mix the water. Now, we have malleable dough. Mixing and kneading the dough is essential to the bread making process so it can rise. As we mix the bread, stretchy gluten film is trapping and holding in air bubbles. These bubbles of air created by kneading will be necessary later when we bake. Now that we are about to bake, have you ever wondered what actually causes the rising of bread? Well, it has a lot to do with the yeast. The yeast from the flour is a one-cell plant that feeds on a simple sugars from the dough. The yeast releases a liquid filled with alcohol and carbon dioxide into the air bubbles created by kneading. Later on, as we bake, the CO2 and alcohol will come into play. So right now, those air bubbles that are injected with alcohol and CO2 are warming up. The alcohol is starting to turn into a gas as it heats up and evaporates, which in return is causing the dough to lighten and rise even more. The dough continues to expand, creating chains of more bubbles out of bubbles, and as the alcohol turns into a gas, the dough reaches its last rise called the oven spring, which continues until the yeast gets so hot that it dies. After the yeast dies, starch granules trapped in the film bend and curve around in between the gas bubbles, encasing them as dough gets harder, causing the gluten to cook and become hard. Now you have created bread which is filled with millions of tiny air chambers which make up its distinct texture. I touched it.
Oh shit, okay.
Yeah, hold on, please.
That's gonna be a real problem.
Yes! Now that you've successfully created your bread, there's one last thing to do. Eat your creation.